I'm Don Ma. President Trump is extending the ceasefire with Iran, which was set to expire tonight. The president also says Iran will not execute 8 women over their involvement in nationwide protests earlier this year. 4 will be released after Trump asked the regime to halt the executions. Iranian forces today attacking 2 ships and taking custody of them. What we know so far about the seizure in the Strait of Hormuz. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent on Capitol Hill today defending budget cuts, explaining the economic toll of the war in Iran, and facing tough questions from both sides of the aisle. President Trump proposing a $1.5 trillion defense budget, calling it a generational investment. What's driving the massive increase and where the money would go? Florida launches a criminal probe into OpenAI after the state's attorney general says ChatGPT helped a gunman plan a deadly shooting at Florida State University. A new congressional map in Virginia, voters approving a redraw that could give Democrats an edge. The move comes as both parties battle for control ahead of the next election cycle.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. President Trump is extending the ceasefire with Iran, which was set to expire tonight. The president also saying Iran has agreed not to execute 8 women detained over their involvement in nationwide protests earlier this year. 4 of the women will be released after Trump personally asked the Iranian regime to halt the executions. 4 others have had their death sentences commuted to 1 month in prison. President Trump posted on Truth Social, quote, "I very much appreciate that. Iran and its leaders respected my request as President of the United States and terminated the planned execution." The president had previously said that halting the executions will mark a positive step in negotiations. Iranian state media reports of Iranian forces taking custody of 2 ships in the Strait of Hormuz. That's after opening fire on the vessels earlier today. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pazdar has the latest on the crucial waterway.
The Islamic Republic on Wednesday taking custody of 2 trade vessels in the Strait of Hormuz. The 2 are the Panama-flagged MSC Francesca and the Liberia-flagged Epaminondas. The regime is now bringing them to Iran. Reports say Iran fired at both of the vessels and at a 3rd one, but did not take the 3rd vessel into custody. Data published by Marine Traffic shows that the Epaminondas is also being operated by MSC, just like the MSC Francesca. On Wednesday morning, before the news of Iran's seizures broke, President Trump took to social media. He says Iran is collapsing financially. They want the Strait of Hormuz opened immediately, starving for cash, losing $500 million a day. Military and police complaining they're not getting paid. But for now, it doesn't look too good. Top shipping executives tell Reuters they're still cautious of passing through the strait. Arian Pazdar, NTD News.
Meanwhile, the New York Post reports sources in Pakistan indicate that negotiations between the U.S. and Iran could be back on track. Peace talks could take place within the next 36 to 72 hours. Trump has extended a 2-week ceasefire while the U.S. Navy continues its blockade of Iranian ports. Trump told the Post that the possibility of breaking the impasse in negotiations is possible. And gas prices are essentially holding steady. The global benchmark Brent crude is back to fluctuating close to $100 a barrel. West Texas Intermediate is moving roughly around the $90 mark. Both benchmarks rose slightly following reports of Iranian gunfire attacks on at least 3 ships in the Strait of Hormuz. And Wall Street's main indexes building on this morning's rally this afternoon after President Trump extended a ceasefire with Iran. The Dow up just over 0.5%, with the S&P 500 up about 0.8% and the Nasdaq up about 1.4%. Military planners from more than 30 nations are meeting in London today and tomorrow to discuss opening the Strait of Hormuz. The talks are taking place at the UK's Permanent Joint Headquarters. The sessions build on last week's conference, co-chaired by French President Emmanuel Macron and UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Plans are being made for after the war ends. UK Defense Secretary John Healey saying the goal of the current meeting is to protect freedom of navigation in the strait. He's calling for stronger coordination across nations and collective action. Next, U.S.-China tensions over Iran. President Trump calling out Beijing over a ship the U.S. forcibly seized on Sunday near the Strait of Hormuz, speaking on CNBC.
We caught a ship yesterday that had some things on it which wasn't very nice. A gift from China, perhaps. I don't know. But I was a little surprised, but because I have a very good relationship, and I thought I had an understanding with President Xi, but that's all right. That's the way war goes, right?
The comments come amid ongoing U.S. concerns about foreign support to Tehran during the conflict. Officials have suggested Russia has provided some support to Iran during the war, while China's role remains less clearly defined. Any provision of lethal military assistance to Iran could expose China to significant economic penalties. Meanwhile, posting on X, Senator Rick Scott says Communist China caught red-handed. Scott says the vessel was headed to Iran to provide them with dual-use chemicals used to create ballistic missiles. Scott added, quote, "This is exactly why they are our enemy and an imminent threat to our national security." And in a related move, the Treasury Department is announcing that it's sanctioning 14 targets for their involvement in helping the Iranian regime obtain weapons, accusing those entities of assisting Iran in purchasing or transporting weapons or weapon components on behalf of the regime. Meanwhile, Israel is urging Lebanon to take action against Hezbollah as rare direct talks move forward.
I call on the government of Lebanon, let's work together against the terror state that Hezbollah built in your territory. This cooperation is needed by you even more than by us. It requires more clarity and the courage to take risks.
Foreign Minister Gideon Saar saying there is no real alternative for ensuring a future of peace between the two nations. Negotiations will be held tomorrow in Washington. The talks mark the first direct engagement in decades. Saar says border disputes are minor and solvable, but insists Hezbollah must be addressed. Tensions remain despite a 10-day ceasefire. Lebanon reports an Israeli drone strike that wounded 2 people, though Israel denies responsibility, and Hezbollah has claimed its first attack since the truce. President Trump is extending the ceasefire with Iran. Joining us now is Cheyenne Sami, national security and Middle East analyst. So, Cheyenne, good afternoon. Good to see you today. And President Trump said the ceasefire will be extended until the Iranian regime proposes a deal. What is your analysis on this move?
Hi, Don. Thanks for having me. And basically, President Trump is trying to force the Iranian regime into a tough decision because right now the president is thinking the blockade, the military blockade by the Strait of Hormuz is doing its job, which is costing the Islamic regime about $500 million a day in lost revenue. So if there is something that could be done by the blockade to achieve the same goals, why not do that instead of resuming the military campaign? However, President Trump is also keeping the military campaign's pressure alive on the Iranian government and asking the world community, especially the Europeans, to pay a close attention that when they demand a diplomatic measure or diplomatic way to deal with Iran, the United States is willing and is also willing to go through the cost of even transporting the U.S. Vice President to Islamabad for such a discussions, but it is the Iranian regime that cannot get its act together, or there is so much disagreement internally that they can't come up with a wholesome solution. So I think the president is trying to force the Iranian regime's hand and at the same time using the very good leverage of the blockade to basically enforce the tough economic measures upon the regime.
Okay, so those are good points. Let me ask you about them one at a time. So about what you said, that the president is trying to force the Iranian regime to make a deal. How much pressure then is this blockade, the threat of military action, how much pressure is the Iranian regime feeling?
Well, the Iranian regime is feeling the pressure, but one thing that they are not willing to do is to go through the demands of the United States. Why? because they literally see the demands of the United States not as a operational or for war purposes, but they see as a surrender perspective. So they are saying, even if it means that we have to go through this and be killed, at least we are going to uphold our perspective on our religious beliefs. That is the very, very dastardly way of looking at it that the Islamic regime does, but they are trying to force the US's hand in coming up with a middle ground. The United States is unwilling to move on its demands for the nuclear fissile material. They are not going to negotiate on a long-range ballistic missiles for the Iranian regime. They're not going to negotiate on the Strait of Hormuz being controlled by the Iranian regime. And they're not going to sit idly by with the Iranian regime not recognizing Israel as a legitimate government. So what is the Iranian regime going to do? They're going to have demands that the U.S. can meet. Chief among them, removal of all sanctions and giving a guarantee that there will not be any more military activity in that area. So basically, both sides are trying to see which one blinks or which one backtracks first, and then that will be their starting point for a discussion. But I firmly believe that the United States, because of the success of its military campaign, has had the upper hand. So the United States is going to enforce the rules, and the Pakistanis basically are stuck in demanding something that they know the Islamic Republic is unwilling to do.
Okay, you say the United States has the upper hand, and President Trump is also saying that the Iranian regime is fractured. He says seriously fractured. Can we get your assessment on what does that mean? Is there an agreement at all within Iran right now to who is actually in charge?
That's a very good question, because the problem is that within the Iranian regime, there is the IRGC, which de facto is running the country, because the supreme leader, albeit they say they have elected one, but nobody has seen him or heard of him or seen even a still photo of him. So it is the IRGC that is running the show. And the IRGC commander, Ahmad Vahidi, is somebody who has long been trying to get to the top spot. And now that he has it, he's not going to let go. On the other hand, you have the Supreme National Security Secretary, Mohammad Bagher Zolghadr, who he is also one of the hardliners, right-wingers, that is unwilling to move or even fathom the idea of discussions with the United States. And then you have the parliament speaker, Ghalibaf, who is trying to give a different perspective of himself, whereas he also doesn't have a lot of legitimacy within the Iranian population and the Iranian community. Why? Because he was also a former law enforcement forces commander who committed atrocities against university students, tossing people from the second and third floor of the building down just for being in disagreements with the government. And then you also have the Iranian president, who basically has been rendered as useless by the IRGC on one hand and by the parliament speaker from the other hand. So because of this trepidation that exists within the Iranian regime and the fact that none of them knows which one is going to be in charge, and also there is a further challenge. Ghalibaf is scared of going to Islamabad and thinking that on his way back, his plane may be shot down by the IRGC and then blamed on Israel for having committed that. So because of all these uncertainties, there is not one way of making decision in the Iranian government. Therefore, they could not come up with an agreement for a second round of talks in Islamabad. But I don't think President Trump is going to be very, very patient with them more than maybe 3 days.
Okay, so you're saying he's not very patient. President Trump has used this ceasefire to the U.S.'s advantage. He's saying the U.S. is restocking supplies. Who does this ceasefire benefit more, the U.S. or Iran? Because we have to keep in mind the blockade is hurting Iran, right, throughout this ceasefire. But could Iran be taking advantage of this ceasefire?
Well, let's untangle it and think and look at it again. President of the United States is talking about the United States military being able to regroup, and they have done that. They have also brought a third naval strike group to the region. So they are building more and more momentum and a larger armada in the area. The Iranians, on the other hand, let's think about it. Have they been able to regroup or reassess their nuclear capability? No, they don't even know where they are. Have they been able to think about their ballistic missiles? And also, have they been able to add any more to their ballistic missiles armada? No, they are in shortage of ballistic missiles. And in fact, from the beginning of the military campaign to when the ceasefire started, they have gone through a daily barrage of strikes against Israel and the Persian Gulf region countries. But then towards the end and right before the ceasefire, that had trickled down to maybe 2 or 3 a day. So the Iranians don't have that huge of a military capability and the ability to build up. The United States, on the other hand, has been able to do that. And the United States has been able to render the Iranian economy useless by the military blockade. And that's why it is having a bigger impact. And the Iranians are thinking about how do we go around it. And that's why the Iranians are demanding that the blockade has to end before we come to the table. They want to have their economic well-being at least sort of restored before they can talk to the United States. And I doubt that President Trump would want to do that at this moment.
Okay, Cheyenne, just one last question here. You said earlier President Trump may not be very patient in this ceasefire. Can you lay out for us the paths that are in front of Iran right now that it can take? One, it can agree to U.S.'s terms, and that could be an off-ramp, but what are the other options?
Iran has basically 3 options. Number 1 is agree to the entirety of the request by the President of the United States. And that means one of the 2 sides, either the Ghalibaf side, who is the parliament speaker, or the IRGC side will have to blink. Either one of them blinks, the other one will destroy them internally or try to attempt to assassinate them. Number 2 is to use a delay tactic by saying, oh, we will be willing to do X if the President of the United States is willing to do Y, simply to just buy more time. And number 3 is to just say, we're not negotiating, this is not a good deal, and we're going to go to war. Options 2 and 3 are going to be detrimental to the Iranians. Why? Because if they choose to say, we are not going to go through this deal and this is all gone, then what they have done is they basically have said, we're seeking war. They cannot then go to the people and say, this is the United States imposing a war on us. Now they have to defend an indefensible argument that they try to lay upon the United States from the get-go. And then if they say, okay, let's use a delay tactic, the United States is going to realize that they are just trying to waste time as they have done for the past 46, 47 years. And then the United States is not going to withstand that. So I think the only remaining option for this government is to just say, we're willing to accept the terms. We're even willing to think about a transition to a democratic government. And we're willing to hold a referendum so the people could speak. But any one of those options basically will lead to the same thing, which is the collapse of the regime.
Okay, so I don't want you to predict the future here, but what is your gut feeling that the Iranian regime, the path that it's going to take, 1, 2, or 3?
I think they're going to go with 1, because they want to say, okay, let's at least save face and say we have negotiated something with the United States. But that would mean that one of the two sides will lose, and then one of the two sides will be eliminated by the other surviving party. And then that could potentially lead to another round of discussions, or perhaps a collapse from within, because the people will realize that this group is as feckless as the other one, and they will rise to seek control of their government.
Okay, Cheyenne, very good conversation today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Treasury Secretary Besson tells lawmakers Operation Economic Fury against Iran is just getting started. Plus, a senator raises the alarm over Chinese-linked marijuana operations and money laundering in rural Maine. More news after this break. Stay with us.
This is how I keep my joints happy.
Omega XL is a powerful natural supplement backed by 40 years of clinical research. Take control of your pain, like Cynthia Bailey.
My knees in particular started giving me pain issues all the way back to my modeling days, from just running through airports, photo shoots. After taking Omega XL, I really started to notice how less stiff I was, especially my knees and my hip. Has Omega XL changed my life? Yes. I barely notice my joint pain anymore. Now I'm like literally sprinting through the airports. My secret is Omega XL.
Pick up the phone and call now to get this exclusive TV offer. Buy one Omega XL and we'll send you a second bottle absolutely free. You'll also get a free bottle of Vitamin XL D3. Buy one, get two free. A total value of over $115, all for just $49.95. You save more than 55% and shipping is free. Backed by a money-back guarantee and is not available in stores. Operators are standing by, so call now.
Hi, I'm Jane Seymour, and I spent years on TV playing a doctor. But I learned about the heartbreaking reality of heart disease and stroke when they touched my own life. My father nearly died before having a quadruple bypass and valve replacement that saved him. And my mom, who was my inspiration, suffered a stroke that took away her speech, her ability to move, and ultimately her life. To see someone so vibrant, so positive, who'd survived so much in life, be debilitated by a stroke, it was devastating. And also a wake-up call. And that's why I'm so passionate about supporting the American Heart Association. They're doing more every day to stop needless deaths. But they simply can't do their life-saving work without you. So please, call now or go to helpheart.org. And for only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, your donation will go to work to do amazing things, like fund the next medical breakthrough, get the next person trained in CPR, and the next hospital certified in high-quality cardiovascular care. I hope that you'll open your heart right now and join me. Please, call now or go to helpheart.org. Give $19 a month and we'll send you this special t-shirt that you can proudly wear to show that you're part of a community of monthly donors who are helping save lives. A healthy heart, it's the spirit of life. It makes it possible to do the things that you love, to spend time with your friends and family and fulfill your life's dreams. But so many won't have that chance. Heart disease is America's #1 killer and the #1 killer of women. And that's why I'll do whatever I can to make sure others don't die from heart disease before their time. So please, join me.
Please call or go online to helpheart.org, become a monthly donor, and for a limited time only, your first month's gift will be matched.
Thank you.
Six individuals have been indicted for their alleged roles in a Washington, D.C. car theft ring. U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, Janine Pirro, laid out the charges.
In this indictment, we've identified over 20 cars with an estimated street value of just under $1 million. But law enforcement is continuing to investigate the fact that this ring may be involved in the theft of more than 100 vehicles in D.C. and more than 30 more vehicles in Prince George's County, Maryland, that is valued at up to $4 million. The individuals whose indictments have been unsealed at this point are Jacob Hernandez, David Kobe, Dustin Wetzel, Chance Clark, and James Young.
The indictment follows a year-long investigation. The DOJ accuses the defendants of using electronic devices that enable them to reprogram cars to accept blank key fobs. The alleged car theft ring was able to steal vehicles in Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Pennsylvania before transporting the vehicles. The defendants allegedly disabled GPS and Bluetooth capabilities to prevent detection. The group is accused of transporting the vehicles across state lines and shipping them in containers to buyers in Africa. On Capitol Hill today, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent testifying to lawmakers. He fielded questions from lawmakers about the department's budget cuts, state of the economy, and the economic impact of the war in Iran. NTD's Melina Weisskopf has more.
This pressure campaign is referred to as Operation Economic Fury. It's mainly targeting Iranian oil and weapons procurement networks. Now, the U.S. has already sanctioned entities and aircraft based in Iran, China, Turkey, and the United Arab Emirates for their involvement in procuring weapons on behalf of the Iranian regime. Here's what the Treasury Secretary had to say about the success of the operation leaving today's hearing. How successful has Operation Economic Fury been in crippling Iran's regime?
Massive. Economic Fury is just getting started.
In a post just yesterday, Bessent said that in a matter of days, Karg Island, which is home to the port that exports 90% of Iranian oil, he said that storage will be full and the fragile Iranian oil wells will be shut in. Constraining Iran's maritime trade directly targets the regime's primary revenue lifelines. Another topic discussed today was the spiking gas prices that we've seen since the Iran war broke out. President Trump earlier this week vowed that those prices would go down immediately once the conflict comes to an end. But Bessent today still faced pressure on this, assuring lawmakers that the gas prices would have actually been higher had the Treasury not taken steps with the sanctions. Listen.
The oil prices are at $100. If we had not done that sanctions relief, they might have been at $150 because the world became very well supplied. So if Russia was selling their oil at a 20% discount, I can tell you that 100% of 100 is less than 80% of 150, and the American consumer has been better off.
The secretary also spent time pushing back on Democrat opposition. Democrats have said that the Iranian regime has actually benefited from U.S. sanctions, but here's what Bessent had to say.
Can you give me any brief idea why it's a good idea to relieve sanctions on Iranian and Russian oil?
Good. With pleasure, Senator. The $14 billion is a myth and unfortunately a DNC talking point that I've been subjected to many times. If anyone would like to show me where that $14 billion comes from,
I look forward to an exchange of details on that, Mr. Secretary.
Today's hearing was mainly focused on the budget cut request coming from the administration. So the Treasury wants a $1.5 billion budget cut. The administration has said that this acknowledges the limited resources that they have.
This proposal reflects a focus on improving efficiency and making targeted decisions about where resources can have the greatest impact.
Now, one senator also brought up an issue that's closer to home in the state of Maine. Senator Susan Collins says that there are actually Chinese Communist Party-led money laundering operations in her state, and she asked the secretary about what they're doing to combat these. But just for some background information, here's what the senator told me about what's actually going on with these money laundering operations in Maine.
It is suspected that there are over 250 houses in rural areas of the state that are operated by Chinese-affiliated transnational criminal groups. They are growing illegal marijuana, and then the money from that is used to bring the precursor chemicals that China produces that fuel the fentanyl trade. Wow. So it's a very serious problem.
Now, the secretary vowed to her that he will personally look into the criminal investigations underway right now at the IRS and make sure that these criminal organizations are quickly dismantled.
Florida is launching a criminal probe into OpenAI and its artificial intelligence app ChatGPT. The investigation concerns a deadly shooting last year that killed 2 people at Florida State University.
The chatbot advised the shooter on what type of gun to use, on which ammo went with which gun, on whether or not a gun would be useful in short range. ChatGPT advised the shooter on what time of day would be appropriate for the shooting to interact with more people, and where on campus would be the place to encounter a higher population.
A gunman killed 2 people and wounded 6 others at Florida State University in April last year before he was shot by officers and hospitalized. The suspect was charged with multiple counts of murder and attempted murder. Florida's Attorney General says if it was a person on the other end of that screen, they would be charged with murder. The investigation will determine whether OpenAI bears criminal responsibility for ChatGPT's actions in the shooting. Iranian forces fired on 2 commercial vessels near the Strait of Hormuz just hours after President Trump announced an extension to the ceasefire. We discussed this with a former U.S. Army veteran.
The 8th NTD International Piano Competition welcomes distinguished pianists from around the world, celebrating the depth, discipline, and expressive power of the Baroque, classical, and romantic repertoire. September 1st through the 5th, 2026, New York City. Apply at piano.ntdtv.com, honoring the timeless tradition of the piano.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see.
They're just young people, hungry, homeless, and vulnerable. Abused youth often feel safer on the street. Now, more than ever, that's the most dangerous place of all. Covenant House is helping young adults facing homelessness. We're providing safe shelter to thousands, but the need is overwhelming, and no young person is ever turned away. Please call or go online now with your gift of $19 a month to help a young person. You'll provide safe shelter, hot meals, and medical care. Your gift will show them they're loved. Homeless young people are afraid and alone with nowhere else to turn.
You want to know that there's somewhere you can go that's safe. So the Covenant House did that for us.
Please call now with your gift of $19 a month. We'll send you this blanket as a reminder of the comfort your gift provides a young person tonight. Please don't wait. Your gift is the lifeline a young person needs now. Call the number on your screen or go online to safeplacetosleep.org. Thank you for saving precious lives.
Kids love it. Parents trust it. Obviously. Explore GJW Plus Kids Series and Ganjiong Campus courses led by expert educators. This is spectacular. Children will learn values like respect, responsibility, and knowledge in language, science, and more. Wow. All while having fun. Perfect. Subscribe today at GJW Plus Kids, where learning meets fun.
Joining us now to talk about the latest on Iran is retired Lieutenant Colonel Darren Gobb, geopolitical strategist and former Black Hawk helicopter pilot and battalion commander in the U.S. Army. Colonel, good afternoon. Always good to have you. So, Iranian forces fired on 2 commercial vessels near the Strait of Hormuz, and this is just hours after President Trump announced an extension to the ceasefire. How do you read this situation?
Well, there's a couple ways of looking at it. One of them, Don, is to just say that they were flexing their muscles, meaning and that there's something on those ships they wanted to make sure didn't get out. I'm less inclined to believe that. I'm more inclined to believe that Iran wants to make sure that they send a message to all those who are seeking to transit that they still have the capability to affect ships that are making their way through the strait. And that message is already heard now, even if they're not always capable of doing it in mass, they're capable of doing it enough to make shipping companies recognize the risk and decide not to even attempt it still, thus effectively keeping the strait locked. question then becomes, why are they doing that in that case while we, the U.S., already have it locked down with a naval blockade anyways?
Okay, so on this ceasefire extension, President Trump said in the Truth Social post that he wants a unified proposal. He said the government of Iran is seriously fractured. So given these points, I mean, what is your feeling on the chance that Iran will come back with a unified proposal?
Oh, well, I don't, I guess, have a lot of hope for an actual unified proposal that would bring together the different factions that have developed inside Iran right now, and that it could actually hold water if somebody were to sign off on it. You may see something, because I think Iran in general has to come to the table in Islamabad. They really don't have a whole lot of choice now, unless they choose to go down the route of almost complete and utter destruction of their security apparatus within the nation. But if it does happen, the risk, of course, then becomes, who are you talking to? What points are agreed to? If someone signs a peace treaty or whatever that agreement looks like, can they go back to Tehran and actually have that security apparatus and all of its elements follow by that treaty in the first place? Or will they continue to fracture or choose to fracture at that point and go a different route? Because whoever is in Islamabad could go back to Tehran and realize that they're not in charge, and the IRGC itself chooses to go a completely different direction. And we've wasted time at a negotiating table where our counterpart isn't in control of anything.
Okay, but speaking of time, President Trump said in that post that it appears that he's going to wait until a proposal is delivered. I mean, what do you think about that? Does a prolonged ceasefire create any operational advantages for Iran, potentially time to resupply or regroup, things like that?
Well, that advantage always exists in any kind of ceasefire, no matter how long you have. It's going to be how much can you get done in the time you have available. And by the way, that clock goes both ways. So it helps us as well with resting our fighters, with rearming and refitting everything, fixing things. So that works to our advantage also. But in the end, I think what Trump is messing with here is a clock that says, there's a point at which we know that Iran is not serious. And at that point, we're going to take whatever the next steps are that are appropriate to make sure that Iran capitulates to us militarily and in every other way. My challenge is that I think what you've got is a ideologically aligned group of people that are still in charge of Iran that look just like the ones prior to them, that would rather die than suffer the dishonor of surrendering or capitulating to the West, whether that be Israel, the United States, or something else. I'm skeptical about them doing that in the first place.
Do you think another possibility is that Iran is simply trying to delay and buy time? For example, waiting out this war or waiting out Trump?
Always. They're always going to buy for time, and that is a strategy that's been applied not only with them. Hamas has done it, Hezbollah has done it, to a lesser extent, of course, the Houthis have done it. But that's something that anybody involved in foreign policy and geopolitics knows, that nations like Iran are going to try to use the clock to their advantage in some way and delay things. Iran may be trying to get to the point where Epic Fury goes before another congressional vote at day 60, or whatever that may turn into and how that looks, to see if Congress flexes its muscles here to try to tell Trump to stop. I don't think that's going to happen, but they may be trying to play that card in the first place. Either way, the longer they delay, they're going to be able to try to get things moved into country, even on a small scale, to seek some sort of military advantage, because they clearly are overmatched, and they're going to do everything they can to try to make this costly for us should we have to resume operations.
Okay, so if this is the case, that Iran is trying to buy time, how long can they sustain themselves in this conflict, with the blockade and everything else?
Mm-hmm. Well, there are a number of variables involved in that make it difficult to say and give an absolute date and time. But I would say that probably in the next 5 to 7 days, you're going to see a combination of things take effect, which is, one, the loss of $500 million a day to their economy, which is significant. Second of all, it's going to be the fact that the oil supply storage capabilities as well as pumping capabilities will all get basically backed up and shut down to the point where it's going to take quite a while to restart everything, even if you can. You put all these pieces together, your time is running short on Iran essentially shutting down and not having an economic choice. They've been defeated militarily. Now they're trying to wage war on the diplomacy and the economic side of it, and they're losing that one gradually as well.
What would you consider a circumstance of victory for the United States?
The ultimate, I think, victory definition would look like an actual ideological regime change in Iran that, with people in charge that would actually have the interest of their people at heart and try to grow into a friendly neighbor in the region. That's the ultimate. Somewhere in between, I would say, a semi-cooperative government, even if they are somewhat still the same ideology, who recognizes they've been defeated and basically goes back inside their own borders, not able to affect the greater region with nuclear missiles and drones, and a Navy that can continue threatening the strait with the strait open. I think something in the middle is probably more likely. The second thing I described is more likely to happen than an actual full regime change.
Do you think Israel is doing enough, or maybe there's something more that they can do to help usher in this ideological change in Iran?
Well, for now, I think they're doing quite a bit, more than enough when it comes to at least eliminating proxies, specifically Hamas, Houthis the best they can. And then as we move forward, what does Hezbollah look like? If you take those proxies out of the equation, by and large, they've done quite a bit to limit Iran's reach already. Combine that with the offensive operations they took part with us. That was very significant and very effective. And I'd say right now what they're doing is actually a favor, which is standing down and letting this process play out and not rattling their sabers more while we try to see if we can achieve some sort of deal. But I'm positive, 100% positive, they're ready to go at a moment's notice if there is no hope for a treaty.
Okay, let me just get one more comment from you, Colonel. Some people say the only way to get a real ideological change is through the people of Iran. Where do you stand on that?
I'm one of those people. I've been saying it on many outlets and many shows. I have been through too many nation-building exercises, too many regime change wars around the world. It just simply doesn't work. And when you talk about the size and scope of Iran from geography to its 90 million person population, the real solution inside of Iran has to be the people. There's no other way to do it.
Okay, Colonel, always good to speak with you. Thank you very much.
You too. Thanks, Don.
Breaking news. Georgia Democratic Congressman David Scott has died at the age of 80. His office confirmed today. Scott served nearly 5 decades in elected office and made history as the first black man to chair the House Agriculture Committee. A cause of death has not been released. Scott had filled for re-election or filed this year, planning to seek a 13th term in Congress. We'll continue to update you on this developing story. Washington is taking a closer look at a string of deaths and disappearances involving scientists in the U.S. nuclear rocket programs. Now, the CEO of Falcon Space, Mark Sokol, is speaking out. Sokol says he knew researcher Amy Eskridge, who is one of the 11 scientists whose death is raising suspicions. Authorities ruled her death in 2022 as a suicide. NTD's Daniel Monahan has the story.
I'm here at Falcon Space, where we're trying to figure out what makes UFOs fly and trying to build one.
Mark Sokol is the CEO of Falcon Space, an anti-gravity research lab located in Hawthorne, New Jersey.
Which is interesting because SpaceX is located in Hawthorne, California. So we're like the SpaceX of the East.
The lab was formerly a hybrid battery repair shop that Sokol operated. Sokol shows an experiment with an electrostatic field and a crystal growing machine for the anti-gravity tech they are working on. Sokol says he briefly dated scientist Amy Eskridge for 2 months.
She ran a Institute for Exotic Science, which was basically a hub for taking technology that was developed at NASA and commercializing it.
Eskridge said she was being threatened. She later died in 2022 from what authorities ruled a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Sokol says he accepts that conclusion, but claims there were unusual incidents surrounding her.
There were definite attacks that happened. And that also contributed to a state of paranoia. Once you start looking for espionage, you start looking for hacking, you start finding it everywhere. It's kind of like if you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. But there was a kernel of truth to it, but not everything was true.
He adds that Eskridge's research was eventually made public after her death.
Basically, a spin-coupled force, rotating magnets, rotating devices, rotating fields would couple to Earth's spin, and you'd be able to push or pull away from Polaris, from the North Star.
These days, Sokol says his team is focused on areas like dynamic nuclear polarization and experimental propulsion systems.
If you can make matter weightless, anything that involves bringing an object from point A to point B would be affected. Because that's the main constraint in moving something from point A to point B is overcoming those problems of inertia and gravity.
He believes such technology, if successfully developed, could fundamentally change energy and transportation systems. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
China is working on new charging technology for drones, one that could keep them in the air far longer than other methods by beaming energy from the ground to them. Chinese researchers have tested a system that sends power to drones while they're flying. In demonstrations, it kept drones airborne for hours, even as both the drone and charging system were moving. The goal is to reduce reliance on batteries. The technology is still in early stages. Tests showed significant energy loss, with most power not reaching the drone and unstable performance. The U.S. and other countries are also exploring similar ideas, including laser and radio-based systems. A shocking new expose on human rights abuses in China now gaining global attention. An Epoch Times journalist honored for uncovering alleged forced organ harvesting. We have more on that after this break in just a moment.
Food. It fuels our bodies, nourishes our spirits, and brings us together. Because we all need nutritious food to thrive.
Food gives me energy and it also helps me focus.
But not everyone knows where their next meal is coming from. And 1 in 7 people in America face hunger. It's tougher than ever for too many of us. But the simple truth is, ending hunger is possible, and it starts with you. Call or go online to helpfeedingamerica.org and give $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, to help families in your community facing hunger. Feeding America works from coast to coast with partner food banks, food pantries, and meal programs. Your monthly gift delivers food where it's needed most, puts fresh food on the table, and helps kids have healthy meals all year round, even when school is out.
You can see the difference with the kids when they're full. Food is everything.
Please call the number on your screen or go online to helpfeedingamerica.org. Give $19 a month. Your first gift can double an impact. And we'll send you this free canvas grocery bag as a reminder of how you're helping to end hunger for good.
When it comes down to it, it's about taking care of your family first and the loved ones that you need to provide for.
Food donations help me tremendously, and I'm very grateful for the food bank.
I have hope. The simple truth is, ending hunger in America is possible. You can help make it happen. The need is urgent. Call or go online now to helpfeedingamerica.org, and your gift can double in impact.
Whispered across generations, a hidden secret unveils the essence of longevity and vitality, a timeless legend regarding energy and wonder. Rooted in ancient health wisdom, we proudly introduce Pure Tang Black Ginseng, a 100% natural organic energy drink made from premium 6-year-old Korean ginseng. It takes 2,260 days and nights from seed to growth, undergoing a meticulous 9-step process of steaming and drying. Black ginseng reaches its full potency enriched with ginsenoside RG3 and enhanced absorption efficiency. No sugar, no caffeine, no artificial ingredients. Experience the pure natural power of Puretang Black Ginseng. Nourish your body, strengthen your immunity, and boost your energy. To order Puretang Black Ginseng, please visit puretang.com.
An expose on the Chinese Communist Party's horrific human rights violations is receiving widespread attention. Epoch Times senior editor Jan Jekielek has been named Best Author of the Year for his new book, Killed to Order. The book details the Chinese Communist Party's state-sanctioned crime of forced organ harvesting from prisoners of conscience. NTD's Sam Wang has more on this.
Congratulations.
At the French Embassy in D.C. on Monday, the French Quarter magazine awarding its 2026 Best Author of the Year to Jan Jekielek, Epoch Times senior editor and author of the new book, Killed to Order. Through decades of investigation, Killed to Order exposes the Chinese Communist Party's industrial-scale system of forced organ harvesting, a state-backed campaign that takes organs from living prisoners of conscience for profit.
I didn't know much about the subject. I heard about it, I read about it. When I started reading the book, then it became eye-opening for me.
So I learned about organ harvesting through Jan when I had interviewed him for Lindell TV, and I had heard about it before, but never really broken down, where listening to him speak about it made me really emotional.
The whole issue of forced organ harvesting, in a sense, is almost like the forced abortions in China that were happening under the one-child policy, in that it's just so horrific that people don't want to believe it. Jan has done a masterful job at pulling together the evidence to show people that this is absolutely happening.
One of the primary victims is Falun Gong, a spiritual practice based on the principles of truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance. Since 1999, Falun Gong practitioners in China have faced a brutal nationwide persecution campaign. Many have been arrested, tortured, and even killed for refusing to renounce their faith.
This organ harvest, however, serves two purposes. One, obviously, as a form of punishment to the dissidents. On the other hand, there's also utility of that, because the Communist Party nowadays is trying to make money. They have developed this into a great enterprise on money making.
By the early 2000s, hospitals in China were advertising organ transplant wait times of just 2 weeks, a timeline that is nearly impossible under ethical voluntary donation systems.
If somebody says they're going to China to get an organ, and they have been promised that they would get a heart or some other organ in 2 weeks, there's only one way for that to happen, and that is for them to execute a prisoner of conscience.
On Capitol Hill, a bipartisan bill was recently introduced in the Senate to sanction those involved in forced organ harvesting. A similar bill has already passed the House and is now awaiting action in the Senate. Some attendees at the event are calling on the United States to take stronger action.
I would think President Trump, Secretary Rubio, and a lot of others who should have this on their agenda should move and embrace it. I would be happy if the president brought up this issue when he finally has a summit with Xi.
Reporting from Washington, D.C., Sam Wang, NTD News.
Also, the book Killed to Order has hit the New York Times bestseller list. You can pick one up on Amazon or just go to killedtoorder.com. Senate Republicans moving ahead with a budget plan to fund immigration enforcement, breaking a weeks-long stalemate over Homeland Security funding. Lawmakers voting 52 to 46 to advance the measure, triggering the reconciliation process and allowing the bill to pass without Democratic support.
Democrats have effectively written themselves out of the appropriations process by drawing a line in the sand and saying that we are so committed to our open borders and defund the police policies that we are not going to fund the two agencies that are tasked with keeping this country safe, protecting our border, and ensuring that illegal immigrants in this country who commit criminal acts are deported out of the country.
The proposal directs up to $70 billion toward ICE and Border Patrol agencies at the center of the shutdown. Democrats say they will only restore funding to the agencies if changes were made, following fatal shootings by immigration agents in Minneapolis earlier this year. Now, the reconciliation process allows Republicans to bypass the Senate filibuster and move the measure forward on a party line vote. If approved, the plan would fund immigration enforcement separately, leaving the rest of DHS to be handled through a separate bill. Los Angeles is limiting screen time for its students. A resolution passed by the Los Angeles School Board will regulate digital devices use amid growing health concerns. The measure directs officials to develop age-appropriate limits on classroom technology use across all grade levels. The policy builds on a 2024 district-wide cell phone ban and calls for a full review of classroom technology contracts. The resolution to limit student screen time cites findings from the American Academy of Pediatrics. The organization finds that prolonged screen exposure is associated with anxiety, addiction, depression, reduced attention span, and lower economic and academic performance. The Los Angeles School District is the second largest in the nation and is among the first to pursue system-wide restrictions on instructional screen time. FIFA is releasing more World Cup tickets after backlash over new pricing tiers. It says additional seats will go on sale today for all 104 matches, including newly added front category tickets. Those are priced higher than existing options. The move follows complaints from fans who say better seats may have been held back and reassigned under the new category. Ticket prices have also risen, with the final match seats now reaching nearly $11,000. FIFA has not responded to questions about the changes. Meanwhile, reports suggest ticket sales are lagging for some matches, with thousands of seats still unsold. The movie Top Gun is returning to the big screen for a special one-week run starting May 13th. The limited-time screening will celebrate the 40th anniversary of Tom Cruise's 1986 blockbuster. U.S. theaters will also feature renewed screenings of Top Gun Maverick. The 2022 sequel grossed nearly $1.5 billion at the global box office. Fans are also invited to attend a special Top Gun Day event on May 13th, which will feature a limited edition collectible print available at participating theaters. Paramount Pictures have promised, quote, a fully upgraded, high-octane experience. Earlier this month, the studio also announced that Cruise will return for a new chapter in the Top Gun series. Just 50 days before the World Cup kicks off, more tickets released after backlash, and new transportation plans are taking shape along the East Coast, but not every city is handling costs the same way. More news after this break in just one moment.